Hello, guys. This is the story of Snow White. Once upon a time, there lived a very vain queen in a castle far, far away. She was so vain that she would consult her magical mirror in her bedroom every day to make sure that she was the prettiest woman in all of the kingdom. She would go up to the mirror and say, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" And about 99% of the time, the mirror would say, "Of course it is you, your majesty. You, the queen of this kingdom, are the fairest of them all." However, one day, the queen was feeling especially low in the department of her self-esteem. So she went up to this mirror, begging the mirror, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, please let me be the fairest of them all." And the mirror looked back at her and said, "You are no longer the fairest, my queen. There is another, one more fair and one more beautiful than you could ever imagine. Her name is Snow White. She has lips as red as candy apples. She has skin as white as snow and hair as black as a raven's back." This angered the queen very much, and she yelled at the mirror, saying, "Help me find this Snow White. She must be murdered." Now, Snow White lived in a tiny cottage in the hillsides of the kingdom, very much keeping to herself, singing songs among the birds, and helping out the 7 dwarves. Now, the 7 dwarves were a group of tiny, tiny men who did chores around their house and around the kingdom. Now, they didn't do much, but they did make people laugh, and she found that when they brought her a smile, they put her in a better mood. And she found that it would be the best decision to help them out with these chores and make them happy as well. She would go over to their house, bring them pies, and talk about one day wanting to find a prince of her own, a man that could make her just as happy as these 7 little men made her every single day. Now, one day, as she's with her 7 little dwarves, a prince galloped through the forest and came upon Snow White at her well. He said to her, "You are the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. Lips as red as candy apples, skin as white as snow, and hair as black as a raven's back. I must have you." As much as Snow White wanted to say yes, she knew she would need the approval of her 7 little dwarves, and therefore said, "You cannot have me. You must get my approval first, and you must get the approval of the 7 little men that mean the most to me." The prince said, "All right, I will come back in 3 days' time and ask for their approval to marry you." Now the queen, using her special mirror, looked and saw that her son, the prince, was flirting with Snow White, the woman she had decided she needed to kill. She knew that she had to get up on her horse, go into the forest, and kill Snow White herself that very day before the prince got a chance to meet Snow White and get the approval of the 7 dwarves. She got on her horse, drove out into the kingdom, and found Snow White near the 7 dwarves' house, helping them out with their chores. She then lured Snow White deeper and deeper into the forest, and eventually revealed herself as the queen. She said to Snow White, "Bow in front of your queen. Show your queen that you respect her. Show your queen that you are loyal to this kingdom, and tell your queen that you will do whatever she asks of you for the betterment of the kingdom." Snow White, being the kind and gracious person that she is, said, "Well, of course," and she slowly bowed her head. Now the queen had taken a poison apple. She then told Snow White to look up and said, take a bite of this special apple, and you will be my right-hand woman." Snow White said, "Well, of course." She stood up and took a bite of this apple. The queen waited to see if she had been poisoned. and Snow White fell to the ground as if she had passed away. The queen, believing that she had defeated Snow White, believing that she was the fairest in the kingdom, drove away, laughing, rejoicing that she would never again be humiliated by her special mirror. And every time that she asked if she was the fairest of them all, the mirror would say, "It would be you, your highness." Now Snow White laid in the forest when no one found her. The dwarves couldn't find her. Her friends, the birds, couldn't find her. She just laid there. Now the prince did return in 3 days' time to find Snow White lying on a bed of grass in the forest. He said, "Oh my goodness, is she gone? Is she dead?" He leaned over her body and realized that she still had her red lips as red as a candy apple, her skin as white as snow, and her hair as black as a raven's back. She still had her beauty. And the prince leaned over and kissed her. And all of a sudden, Snow White woke up. And she looked at the prince and she said, "I know that you have gotten the approval of the dwarves and of me because you have awoken me with a true love's kiss. You are the man that I want to follow forever. You are the love of my life." And so she and the prince went, met the dwarves. The dwarves loved him, got their approval, and the two of them lived happily ever after. The queen, on the other hand, soon realized that her son, the prince, had married Snow White and had cured her of the poisonous apple. She soon realized that she would never be the most beautiful woman in the kingdom ever again as Snow White lived, and knew she was untouchable because she was married to the prince. The queen fell into a deep despair, never again to ask the mirror if she was the most beautiful. And Snow White and the prince lived happily ever after.